When I first found out Charlie was returning to Street Fighter, I was hyped at the possibilities for his storyline, but concerned about which events from his past were actually canon now. Simply put, how on earth were they going to handle his line of continuity since it had been pretty messy so far? And to that end, what would the character even gain from being brought back from the dead anyway? Well, let's see if any of my concerns were laid to rest. While Japan knew him as Nash, I always preferred calling this character by his more western name Charlie, and I was glad to finally see Capcom officially use Charlie Nash as his full name now, not just one or the other. During the Alpha series, Charlie had a troubling line of continuity, and Capcom themselves didn't seem to be sure just when exactly the character officially died either. Street Fighter V does a fairly good job of tidying that up for us by making his death in Alpha 2 the canon version of events. Charlie takes on Bison but then gets gunned down by a helicopter and dies as he falls over the edge of a waterfall. Sorted. And how is Charlie holding up these days? Well, he looks like he's been to hell and back before someone spliced him together with a Bulbasaur. What's going on with the leaf green zombie look, Charles? I actually don't mind this patchwork design. At first I wasn't too keen on it because it seemed a little out there for someone like Charlie, but it grew on me pretty quickly. Considering he's come back from the dead, it makes sense for him to look like he's just done exactly that. I especially loved the jewel on his forehead, knowing that it connected him to the Illuminati group and that they were going to play a part in this story. It felt like bigger things were finally coming into play and that Charlie was going to have an incredible journey ahead of him. Fuck's sake. We see these types of characters all the time. These corrupted anti-heroes who travel down a dark path but usually end up doing something redeemable by the end of it to reinstate their position as a respectable hero. I have no problem with this type of character. What I do have a problem with is how this base mold was wasted on Charlie when they wrote his story using this template. A character like this tends to go through 3 stages. Setting their objective and vowing to not let anything stop them from their task. Conflict, the character meets old friends who do not share their vision, thus creating a rift between them and sometimes forcing the character to now question their vow. And atonement. The character either learns the error of their ways and returns to the side of the heroes, or continues along their current path but ends it by doing something that will benefit both their goals and those of their friends. Charlie had the first stage all set, but then the next 2 stages kind of fumble into a lackluster, underdeveloped shit show. Things start off simple enough. A character named Helen, who was so obviously Colleen from the Illuminati, resurrects Charlie. For those who didn't catch it, Charlie's body was patched back together by using an inferior version of what would eventually become the character 12 in Street Fighter III Third Strike. Urien, vice president of the Illuminati, is the one responsible for spearheading research into human body reconstruction, and by this point in the story he hadn't perfected it yet, hence why Charlie's body looks a mess. Urien donated a prototype body to Colleen so she could restore Charlie back to life, and that explains how Charlie is back from the dead. Honestly, I was impressed with Capcom for actually bothering to explain this. The reasons behind Charlie Nash being alive again make sense within context of this universe's lore, so, credit where credit is due. Wish I could say the same for the rest of it. Colleen sends Charlie out to retrieve chess pieces from other fighters. These chess pieces are key items that they'll need if they want to stop Bison, and wouldn't you believe it, Charlie's first target is his old friend Guile. And I'm thinking, oh shit, here we go, things are about to get hectic fam. For everyone who grew up with Street Fighter knows, Charlie is the one person that Guile has spent a huge portion of his time dedicated to finding. This was to be the point in the Street Fighter story where finally, after such a long wait, these 2 characters will meet again. How was Guile going to handle it, especially since this wasn't a social call and Charlie was on the offensive? I couldn't wait to see this. And the whole moment of impact between them was shot to shit the second Rashid walked into the scene with his attempt at comedy. Seriously, Rashid absolutely ruined the moment. Yes, the guy is also hunting chess pieces and needed to steal one from Chun-Li, but that could have happened at any other time. They really didn't need to put Rashid here, not right now. His interruption absolutely deflated the level of importance that this scene was meant to deliver. The actions of Charlie and Guile are questionable too. This was the second stage to Charlie's arc, the point in which the character goes against old friends in pursuit of his goal. While that technically did happen, the two characters didn't seem to treat their ill-fated reunion as anything more than a strange, mild inconvenience. Charlie walks back into Guile's life again, and Guile thinks it might be a trick, but at no point do either of them attempt to speak to one another properly so the plot can develop between them. For this stage, we're meant to feel the initial strain on Charlie's bond with Guile. We're meant to feel two old friends at opposite ends of one another. This is meant to be the most pivotal moment in Guile's long history with Charlie, and it is delivered to us as an awkward scene with some bullshit comedy thrown in at the most inconvenient moment. It's such a bloody letdown. Later on in the story, after a failed attack on the Shadaloo base, Charlie and Guile end up in the same place again, this time being on the same side of the coin. There is a neat little moment where Guile gives Charlie back his dog tags. Guile had carried Charlie's tags for so long after his disappearance, it actually felt like proper closure to Guile's journey by seeing him returning these tags to their rightful owner. It was a nice moment, for as short as it was. I only wish the rest of their interactions were as heartfelt as this. We get entire scenes where pointless characters are engaging in pointless conversations, and yet we didn't have one scene where Guile and Charlie talked properly to one another? Why? Regardless, it felt like the final stage to Charlie's arc was vastly approaching. With his body on borrowed time, you could feel something drastic was going to happen with him. Hopefully, his story would have concluded with a satisfying ending that would have at least redeemed himself for going against his friends and finally paint Charlie as a true hero. But no, it actually got a whole lot worse. This was always going to be a suicide mission for Charlie. This was to be his final hurrah, a swan song for a legendary character whose name carried weight within the entire Street Fighter storyline. Nobody, apart from Chun-Li and Guile, probably wanted to stop Bison more than Charlie did. This was meant to be his moment. Instead, what happens? Charlie plays the kamikaze card in an attempt to kill Bison, and Bison just casually walks away from it like some discount Dragon Ball Z villain before stamping on his dog tags, just to, you know, make sure we're being insulted enough. But then I'm thinking maybe Chun-Li might finish him off then, innit? After all, it was considered to be part of Street Fighter canon that Chun-Li was the one who brought down Shadaloo once and for all. Maybe she and Guile will step in to finish off the work that Charlie put in, and that in turn would complete Charlie's objective by extending it to his two friends. It would have actually been a very noble conclusion. But no, Ryu the poster boy shows up and defeats Bison instead. Infuriating. Listen, I don't care if you love Ryu or hate him, that's not what this is about. At the end of the day, this was never Ryu's fight. Ryu played an absolute minimal role in this entire story, and he turns up at the very end to throw an anticlimactic Hadouken that ends Bison's life once and for all. The Street Fighter mascot is thrown in to show off his newly obtained power by killing Bison with it, when there were 3 other characters who were a million times more worthy of taking that shot. This ending wasn't written to please the people who appreciated the Shadaloo story that had been built up over the years. This ending was a major cop-out for the sake of making sure we don't forget who the main character is supposed to be. Charlie Nash's resurrection was mishandled. He did 1 or 2 good things like free Abel of his madness, as well as give closure to Guile's journey, but everything else that he set out to achieve ended in failure, not because he wasn't capable of completing them, but because the writers didn't believe in him enough to carry that torch to the finish line himself. I feel so sorry for Charlie Nash as a character. I wish I could say the sadness I feel for him was down to an incredible arc with a bittersweet ending, but it isn't. It's down to terrible writing and a waste of a character. Charlie initially existed as a plot device for Guile and nothing more. By making him a main character in the story, Capcom had a chance to bring the legend to life, but it's clear to see they were never sure where to take him. His appearances in the Alpha series were retcon after retcon before backpedaling to his Alpha 2 ending. He was revived for Street Fighter V only to achieve the bare minimum and then get killed off again. It's an absolute waste. I have no doubt in my mind that if somebody with a lick of sense had written his story, then they could have directed Charlie Nash for a more compelling arc towards a more fulfilling conclusion. That sadly hasn't been the case, and we are left with a short-changed character and a whole lot of missed opportunities.